Jeremy Clarkson wrote an article about Meghan Markle, or I think he wrote a column piece where he basically said that he wants to parade her through the streets naked and throw excrement at her. I think a lot of people took exception to it. Obviously, it's a bit of a crazy thing to say. I don't like Meghan and Harry very much, but I don't particularly want her to be paraded through the streets and have thrown at her. So.
Did he say the reason why?
I think it's just because of, how they portray themselves. They say they don't want to be in the public eye, and they're constantly in the public eye. They talk about the royal family constantly, even though they don't want to talk about the royal family. So I think people are just kind of tired of their nonsense and tired of the way Meghan behaves and the way Harry portrays himself.
Yeah.
Regardless, I don't want them paraded through the streets having stuff thrown at them.
That's a very horrible thing to say. And I think for him as well, being in the public eye, he probably knows what it feels like to have, say, hurtful things said about him. And I'm sure he wouldn't like it if someone was saying that about him.
But on the flip side, I don't think it's that deep. I think he might have said it in jest. I don't think he was being super literal about it, but maybe he was. But either way, this woman called Tessa Dunlop, she went on GBN, which is some news station, I guess. I think they're an Australian news station. I'm not entirely sure. She kind of had a little bit of a fit about it. So I'm going to play the video and you guys tell me what you think. I found it quite hilarious.
A row has erupted over Jeremy Evil Clarkson's column in The Sun about Meghan Markle at the weekend. The Grand Tour presenter compared the Duchess of Sussex to serial killer Rose West, something that even I think is a bit of an overreaction, and that he dreams of people throwing excrement at her. I think it's sort of Game of Thrones thing, but I've never seen Game of Thrones, so I wouldn't know. Anyway.
Why is he letting another human affect him that much? For him to say at night, I'm unable to sleep. It's like, why is she on your mind so much, and why are you letting what she does with her life bother you?
I would imagine, having watched Top Gear and having watched his show on Amazon, that he is mostly joking here, that he's taking the mick. Because when he is on Top Gear or whatever, he does say some outlandish things that I don't think he believes. That's just, it's meant to be funny. I don't think the joke landed here. I mean, I didn't read it and get offended, but I can understand why Meghan might have seen it and been a bit upset by it, given that the public are not very favourable to her.
I would be as well.
I personally, if it happened to me, I wouldn't care. But I can understand why somebody would care about someone grinding their teeth, dreaming about parading you naked through the streets.
That's bullying behaviour.
Yeah, it is a bit bullish. But again, we live in a very thin-skinned society, so I can understand why this has now been pulled up.
Jezza has since issued a statement, not an apology, I must emphasise, in which he said he was horrified to cause so much hurt and would be more careful in future. Well, with me to discuss this free speech debate is Tessa Dunlop, historian, broadcaster and author of the new book, Elizabeth and Philip. Tessa, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
I get the feeling that you're going to interrogate me here.
No, I was just disappointed with a tweet that I felt rather clumsily popped out, suggesting that on the one hand, yes, Jeremy Clarkson's comments were misogynist and rather unpleasant, but on the other hand, and here you abused history, you were going to defend his right to freedom of speech. It was the altar you were prepared to die on. And
I don't think his comment was misogynistic.
I was going to say that as well. I don't think it was misogynistic.
Yeah, I just think it was a bit of a douchey thing to say. Why is it misogyny? Misogyny is the hate and the contempt of women. He didn't... Just because Meghan is a woman doesn't mean you can't say things about her, whether you think they're nice or not. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a misogynist for saying them. And this debate is going to be over free speech, because I think she wants to criminalize him for saying things like that, or she's against him having the right to say it. I'm not against Jeremy Clarkson having the right to say that. He can say it if he wants. Sometimes the joke will land, sometimes it won't. Maybe it wasn't a joke. Regardless, entertaining the idea that somebody can't put their thoughts online is it's a bit of a slippery slope, in my opinion.
reminded us with a sort of, jackboot analogy that 60 to 100 million people had died in the Second World War to protect our freedoms of speech.
Not the Second World War.
Well, in the last century.
No. The 60 to 100 million I was referring to were the corpses laid at the feet of the Marxists, who controlled and compelled speech and turned people into group thinkers.
Right.
So you missed the point of my tweet.
I missed it. Well, indeed. Well, then you must
never mind.
craft your tweets.
Anyway, let's leave my tweets alone. And you tell me why this is dreadful.
Why should he craft his tweets more carefully if you can't be bothered to read them properly? It's not his fault that you didn't understand what he was saying. You saw something, and like a lot of people that behave like this, they go into a blind frenzy over an issue they have no idea about at all. She didn't know that he was talking about Marxists. She didn't know that he was not referring to the Second or the First World War. She just jumped to conclusions again. So it's not on somebody to correct you for reading their tweet wrong. It's on you to learn to read properly and stop going into a blind rage. You say something, you get halfway through a sentence, and I hate to say it tends to be these leftists. They just go into a blind rage about something that is completely unrelated to what we're talking about. I had a conversation the other day where this literally happened, and it's infuriating because when you're having conversations like that, they continuously move the goalposts, so you can't really stay on topic because they've misheard or misread or misrepresented something that has been said or done, and then suddenly you're arguing about some nonsense that's not even related to what you're talking about.
It's extraordinary that someone like you with such a fine public school education is lumbering under the misconception that we have complete freedom of speech. If I was a paedophile or a terrorist or a fascist, you wouldn't be platforming me right now. If I was inciting hatred against a different race or religion or someone of transgender or disability, I would not be platformed. That would be illegal. So it's a nonsense to suggest we have to let everyone spew out filth and poison left, right and centre, especially men with disproportionately large platforms. And let me tell you, dear Loza, there's an awful lot of you. I don't find it acceptable. And I think what you did was disingenuous.
Well, I condemned the way he spoke and then defended his right to free speech.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
She's so patronising. She's so unbelievably patronising. Dear Loza, you know, I've seen women get upset when guys call them honey or dear, and I've seen a lot of people doing it back to men. Now, but if you don't like people saying something to you, you shouldn't say it back to them. I think that using pedophiles or people that do insane things as your argument to put your foot on free speech's neck is a stupid thing to do.
Look, I agree with you on that point. I think definitely you're right. She's comparing the wrong sort of things there from where she's saying anything to do with race or transgender, things like that. But that's not the case here. However, I think she is making a good point towards people that have got big platforms and what's being put out there.
And with regards to what? As in what, you have a big platform so you can't say what you want to say?
No, but I think you should be a bit more careful with what you say.
Well, one of the consequences of free speech is people rebelling against what you're saying because you're freely allowed to speak. Of course, you can be careful in what you say. You know, we spoke about Andrew Tate saying himself that he needs to curate his message a bit more carefully because he's got a giant platform. I'm not against someone being more careful with what they have to say, but I don't think using the argument that there are extreme views out there as a basis to put a strong, like a pin on free speech is a good argument.
It's not necessarily putting a pin on free speech, but it's putting a pin on certain things that you're saying. I
understand. Once you do put those ideas out there and they are genuinely harmful, then we act. But if you just start saying, oh, this is that and this is that, we can't even really determine what hate speech is anymore. What hate speech is to me is not what it is to the person down the road. So if you say that I'm espousing hate speech and maybe I'm not, I can't speak now. Yeah,
I get your point. But what Jeremy Clarkson's written here is...
It's not grounds for banning him.
It's not grounds for banning, but she's making a valid point towards what he's written. It was horrible. Let's face the facts. It was horrible, and it's just hurtful, and that's why I think you should think before you speak or think before you tweet, because you don't know how what you say could affect someone else.
No, 100%. I'm not saying that there's not consequences for doing and saying dumb things.
No, but you're sitting here going, well, then what about free speech? Okay, I understand free speech, but that doesn't mean you need to just abuse it and be absolutely disgraceful towards someone else.
But the consequences of allowing freedom of speech is allowing people to say and do dumb things. I'm not saying they should do those things. I'm not saying they shouldn't reflect. But if you try to legislate or bring the law in to regulate these things, you're going to have a bigger problem, because once you give the government a little bit of power, they take the piss. So whilst I understand that, like, I could come on here, for example, and I could say all sorts of crazy things, and I understand there'll be consequences for that. But because I say crazy things, for someone to go on a news station and say, here's the reason why we should put legislation around free speech, is not a good idea. That is a very, very, very slippery slope to Marxism. Like he said, it's not worth sacrificing free speech. I do agree with him when he said that he would die on the altar of protecting free speech, because we've seen what happens when you don't protect free speech. When you allow people to speak freely, there's going to be a contingent of people that say and do crazy things. But if you don't allow people to speak freely, there will be a much, much bigger ripple effect through society.
I don't know. I get your point, and I agree with you to a certain extent as well. But I think my biggest issue with, say, online hate or bullying is these people don't know what somebody else is going through, right? For example, people's mental states. And your comment could be the last thing that throws someone over the edge. And then you're going to, not to say you're responsible, but you've triggered that.
Yeah.
If somebody was to do anything to themselves.
So what are you getting at?
My point is more so, it's not towards getting rid of free speech, but mine is more so towards the fact of people should just be careful what they write.
Yeah, I think we can all agree Jeremy Clarkson probably should have chosen his words a bit more carefully, considering the sentiment towards Meghan Markle, because there might be some people that are emboldened to go out there and throw feces at her. So I am on board with that, but I'm not on board with moving the conversation to putting your foot on free speech's neck. I'm not willing to move that far.
Yeah.
I'm willing to be like, okay, Jeremy Clarkson, he could be reprimanded in some way. I'm not saying that. You say dumb, hurtful things about people that could get them hurt. I'm not saying don't reprimand them for that. I'm not even saying hate speech is not a thing. You could consider what he said to be somewhat hateful. If it's not taken in jest and he is sitting there grinding his teeth thinking about the day he could parade her around the streets naked, taking it literally, I can see why you would say that's hate speech towards a particular individual. I don't know if I'd class it as misogyny.
No, it's not.
I definitely wouldn't move towards talking about banning free speech or having more consequences put in place for the population as a whole. I think that what she's proposing is more dangerous. It is definitely worth protecting free speech despite the cons that might come with that, because the cons of not protecting free speech are far worse.
It was almost like saying, let's pat him on the head and put him back in his box, except his box.
That's not what I said.
But it is what you said.
No, that's how you felt about what I said. What I actually said was, look, and you're looking at someone who really doesn't like Meghan Markle and doesn't like that spoiled.
Oh no, let's not go back to. I can't hear another thin-skinned, slightly aging white man be demeaning about Meghan Markle. Not when we've just gone global with one of our leading celebrities wanting to throw excrement at her when she's naked paraded down the street.
I completely agree with you. I think we're agreeing. So let's try and find somewhere where.
Well, no, I can tell you we're not agreeing.
I'm agreeing with you that what he said was something I would.
What does him being a white man have to do with this? I don't like Meghan Markle. I know a lot of guys that are not white and a lot of women that are not white that don't like Meghan Markle and Harry. Skin color has nothing to do with it. Once again, people feel very comfortable like putting things on white people specifically. You would never hear her say that to a black man. You would never hear her say that to an Asian. You'd never say, I don't want to hear another thin-skinned, middle-aged black
as well,
man.
she's firing at.
Yeah, I'm like, lady, there's people all over the world from all walks of life that don't like Meghan Markle, to the point where it's become a joke. There's a South Park episode, I think, that's come out where Harry and Meghan are being interviewed and they're just taking the piss out of them because of all their hypocritical and nonsensical behavior. It's nothing to do with race. It's not because Meghan's mixed race. I don't know where she's from. She's clearly got African or Caribbean descent in her, but it's not because of race. It's not because this guy's rich. It's not because they're white. It's not because they're male. It's just because people don't like them. That's all it is.
I would see as being well above and beyond what I think free speech is there for. But I would ask you the question, do you think that the opposite of that, denying him the right to be so crude and disgusting and misogynistic, is better?
It is currently illegal to stir up hatred against, and I gave you some of the categories, race, religion, disability, sexual orientation. I would like gender to be one of those categories.
What is gender?
There was my gender as a woman, my sex. I want it to be better protected.
But I'm confused. What's gender? You're a woman.
I'm a woman.
Yeah.
If you are... And Jeremy Clarkson, the way he wrote that article, he was very clever. He knows you can't stir up hatred against Meghan Markle on the basis of her race. But she was posited throughout that article very much on the basis of her femininity. She had, to use Donald Trump's expression, whipped her husband, Harold Markle, into his subservient position. She'd basically brainwashed him, but he hated her more than he compared her to two other women, to Nicola Sturgeon and to the murderer, Rose West. So this was about Meghan Markle's femininity. He then asked us to imagine her naked. So he wants to take a woman and us to imagine her naked, and he then wants to shame her and parade her down the street and throw excrement at her. That is hatred towards women, and I don't think that's acceptable.
Look, I agree with you.
Yes, so let's change the law.
No,
yes.
No, that's where I don't agree with you.
Why not change the law?
Because I don't think it's illegal to hate people.
But do you know, the problem is, what happens...
Do you think that's hatred towards women, or do you think Meghan's someone he doesn't like and he went a bit too far?
Yeah, it's now, I think it's now being taken, it's been picked apart and overanalyzed too much. And I find this happens with a lot of different situations as well. Like, you could be talking about an individual and people are always going to pick it apart and make it out like there's an ulterior motive. Have I said that right? Yeah. So I don't think it's anything to do with women. I think it's a personal attack on Meghan.
Why is it not to do with race and women, though? Like, she's making the point about her being a woman, but couldn't I make the same point about it being of race? Because Jeremy Clarkson and Meghan are not from the same place, right? Meghan doesn't look like somebody that would be in the English monarchy, right? She doesn't look like she's in part of the royal family, just based on how they all look. Why can it not be about race? Why? She's making it about being a woman, and it has nothing to do with being a woman, and everything to do with the fact that people don't like Harry and Meghan. I mean, I'm not saying that everyone don't like them. There's plenty of people like them. Plenty of people bought his book. There's plenty of people that don't like them. I don't not like her because she's a woman. I could care less because I don't like Harry either. And the reason I dislike Harry is not because he's white or ginger or royal or whatever.
Why'd you have to bring that into it?
Because, they always bring the ginger thing up. It's like a separate race at this point, but it's not because of any of those things. It's because he comes across like an idiot to me. That's it. It's nothing to do with race. It's the things that comes out of his mouth and his behavior. It's not everything is about what's between your legs or the color of your skin. Sometimes people just say something you don't like. And then in Jeremy Clarkson's case, he took it a bit too far. And what he wrote in there, I think he did go a bit too far. Especially if you are in the public eye and people don't really like you, and then you're writing something like that. I can see how someone would get upset by it, 100%. And I can definitely see how, given all of the attention that's on them, which is their own fault, that they would feel some kind of way about it. But I don't think it's fair to say it's a misogynistic remark. I think you're trying to make it that now.
Is big bears like you, Jeremy Clarkson, Piers Morgan...
Hang on a minute,
No, because
bear?
actually, on this occasion, you've said, whoa, I wouldn't even say that. But generally, you like to poke with a stick. You go as far as you can. You push the right-wing envelope. And as I've explained, you men, Nigel Farage, Dan Wootton, have disproportionately large platforms. You get little me's on, a doctor incidentally, but nonetheless just a little woman, on, and you bear bait us for clicks. Clickety-click, clickety-click. And actually, Jeremy Clarkson will be emboldened by this.
And I want to stop it. You. I'm not even... You see, this is, I think, one of the problems that men will have. It's like, I'm condemning what he said. Yeah. And I'm saying that...
She's bothered.
Yeah, she's triggered. She's like, no one called you a little woman. You called yourself that. If you see yourself as a victim, if you see yourself as small, that's your problem. That's not this guy's problem. That's not Jeremy Clarkson's problem. That's not Nigel Farage's problem. I don't want to get it twisted yet, because sometimes people say, oh, you defending Nigel Farage. I'm not defending Nigel Farage. I don't like the guy. But that's not his problem if you feel like that. That's your problem. No one brought you on here to get... The reason that this video is getting clicks is because of your stupid behavior, because you're now behaving like an erratic child. This wouldn't have been reacted to if horse didn't leave your mouth. If you didn't make it about something that it wasn't, and then you start behaving like that. No one called you a small woman. No one saw... I certainly didn't see it that way when I clicked on the video. I do see her somewhat pathetic now. And it's not this guy's fault, it's your fault. I don't get why people... You can make your point. Now, I'm not saying don't raise your voice, but when they start doing all these hand gestures, when they start self-victimizing, when they start bringing up random things that have nothing to do with the situation, that's where the clicks come from. Yeah. You make yourself look stupid.
But also what she doesn't recognize and notice is that what she's doing right now, by bringing up all these names and name calling, she's basically doing what she originally came here to complain about. Somebody being hateful and abusive to another human.
Well, you can't be hateful and abusive to white people because, They are they're our overlords, right? You can't be abusive to our overlords. They control everything. That's her logic. To her, she's a victim. But you know what? When people play the victim oppression tier list, I'm just like, okay, fine. We'll put white guys at the top. I'll concede that. But white women are going to be just below them. So if you get a black woman that comes on here and starts saying all this stuff, she's going to be a little bit lower on the oppression tier list than you. And then now you have to shut up because she's put you in a box, even though you have nothing to do with it. So you put this guy, you calling him a big bear, you're making out like he said these things about you. Put yourself in that box. People love playing this oppression game, and it's tired, and you make yourself look dumb. The reason that you're on TikTok, the reason that you're on this video, the reason that people react to it, the reason that it's got all those views is because you make yourself look dumb.
On a philosophical level, I protect everybody's right to free speech. I think it's better.
Everybody's right. You want paedophiles, fascists, you want racists. Do you really want everyone to have freedom of speech?
What's the option? What's the alternative?
At the moment, they're enshrined in law is actually to be protected against fascists and paedophiles.
So it's enshrined in law. So we just leave it. I found what he said abhorrent. I didn't find it abhorrent. I thought it was clumsy and crap. Ooh, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but it was dreadful. And I condemned it. And I don't see why I'm getting a lecture for supporting you.
Because you've come out on Twitter saying, you've said there, okay, with where freedom of speech is at the moment. And I'm saying, but it's not good enough. Because actually what this does is emboldens misogynists. Someone like Jeremy Clarkson now, he got his grand tour mentioned on your television. The Sun's probably not sold so many since 1990.
It's probably why he did it.
Well, exactly. And I'm saying that is not acceptable. And the way to stop it is to change the law.
Stop with the law changing.
And then knock little men off their platforms like you.
Little man? I thought I was a big man. A bear, you said I was.
Because you have a big platform, darling.
All right, darling.
Will I scuttle out of your cave now and leave you in your cave?
It's not a cave. You're more than welcome to stay.
I'm been quite angry. You make me angry, Lawrence.
Well, I'm very sorry. I've literally said nothing.
You didn't have to.
Whew.
Just by sitting in for Nigel Farage, darling.
Was that necessary? Flickety flick.
Little man, I thought.
Crawl out of your cave, little man. Get off your platform. Was that necessary? She used the word fascism, right? And I really don't think a lot of people know what fascism means. If you want to oppress the opposition and stop them from speaking, that is literally in the definition of fascism. Stopping somebody from speaking and expressing themselves is fascist. You imbecile. That is what you're advocating for here. You're advocating for fascism. And you're trying to do that by calling him a misogynist rather than just identifying that Jeremy Clarkson makes off-the-hand comments all the time about all sorts of things and all sorts of people. This was nothing to do about hating women. It's nothing to do about hating someone's race. It was everything to do with the fact that, like he said, Jeremy Clarkson made a clumsy comment. Go on Google, type in fascism, right at the end, it literally says forcible suppression of opposition. If you don't understand what those words mean, I suggest you buy a dictionary. But the people that keep on saying that we need to change laws around free speech because of fascism, you are leaning into fascism. You have to stop saying this. It's dumb and it's annoying and it is tired. You are what you hate.